I always knew a moment would come again where I would run out of room, but I never knew that it would be this quickly.
Hooray! Hooray for everything!
Thanks for watching. Today we're taking another look at the Trail Honcho, and we're also taking another look at the SCX6 Jeep. In case you're not familiar with these trucks, these are 6th scale. Perhaps you think I'm just a really tiny dude and these are 10th scale trucks, but that's not the case. This is the one that got released first, and then after that this Trail Honcho has just dropped. In terms of driving and in terms of what they pack under the hood, it is all very much similar. So all the electronics are similar. The wheelbase is exactly the same. So there's really no differences there. If you want to get creative with these and alter the wheelbase, you can do that. I hope I've showed that to you in the past couple of months by shortening a wheelbase, which I've done, by stretching a wheelbase, which I've done. So I've built a Gladiator, I've also built a 2-door Jeep, and seeing that right now we have a lot more parts to play with that come with its Trail Honcho, I think is fantastic. It also shows that this SCX6 platform is here to stay, and it is here for the long run. I do hope that more variations will also be brought to market. Like for example, I could see a Deadbolt, I could also see perhaps a Capra, a Bomber, a Wraith even. I think it really offers a lot of opportunity for Axial to see how far they can stretch it in this market. And that is not even considering all of the licensed options. I can imagine if you have the Jeep already, perhaps you don't have the space or perhaps you don't have the funds to also go get a Trail Honcho. So I think what you will see is also a lot of people who will convert their Jeeps to a Trail Honcho. This video is to highlight what you need in order to get this to this. So it's pretty basic. There's only 7 main parts numbers differences between these two trucks, and we're going to go over them one by one. First one is the Demello Offroad front bumper. Is this an item that you can also use on the Jeep? You perhaps could, but it would look a tiny bit weird. This Demello Offroad front bumper sits a bit higher than the CRC bumper sits on the Jeep, and it would obscure quite important part, I guess, of that Jeep grille, which is the lower half. Also this top bar, it would almost stick out above the hood, making it really ugly. So that's really not something that you want to experiment with. Maybe for shits and giggles at some point I'll just throw it on there just to show you that you should not want that. But that is an essential part if you want to convert it, because if you use the CRC front bumper on the Trail Honcho, it will look ugly. Another part is the rock sliders. So there's brand new rock sliders on this Trail Honcho. The Jeep ones are again CRC licensed, so these are Jeep specific, and you cannot use those on the Trail Honcho. Now the third one is something that in convenience is a huge improvement over what you would find on the Jeep. The Jeep really needs to be massaged in order to get the body on the chassis. And that is because the fender liners are really tight inside that body. Also means that it takes a lot of, it keeps a lot of crap out, but at the same time it's not really user friendly. This thing is also mounted with 4 body clips, where the Trail Honcho is only mounted with 2. So this thing tilts up. It has a hinge, a pivot point in the back, and it just makes it a bit more user friendly also out on the trails. These fender liners are far more tucked in. Also making sure that you don't have to massage them on in order to get that body to sit on the chassis tightly. 4 is not really necessary, and that's those Falcon Wild Peak tires. If you want to go for this exact look, you of course do need those Falcon Wild Peak tires. You also need a 5th rim in order to have that spare wheel. That's a big difference, I guess, from the Jeep. The Jeep does not come with the spare, and the Trail Honcho does come with a spare. Also means that it is pretty heavy in the back, but that is an easy fix by just taking that spare wheel off. Number 5, the rear cage. This thing is so fantastic looking in person that it is pretty hard to convey that on camera. You really need to see it up close. With that rear stinger as well, it looks so incredibly aggressive. It has that accessories box or whatever you want to call it in the shape of that fuel cell that you can open up. It is fairly waterproof as well, so if you want to transport some of your stuff dry, you can also do that. And you have those recovery boards on top. All of that is one parts item, so I will also make sure that that is listed below. This along with the hinge in the back in order to tilt that body backwards. Now that brings us to, I think, the most interesting part of this entire conversion, which is the body. This body is, of course, specifically made for the SCX6. At first glance, you might think that it is an SCX10 version 2 Honcho, increased in size, but that is truly not the case. If you have a close look at it, and you also have a close look at the Basecamp, you will see a lot of similarities between those two. And you will also see a lot of similarities between the Basecamp and the Proline metric, and that is because it is the exact same design. So essentially, what you get on the SCX6 Trail Honcho is a 1/6 scale Proline metric body. What does that mean? Perhaps you're not a geek. That means that all of the Night Customs parts that are designed for the Proline metric, you could increase their size and make them fit on the SCX6 Trail Honcho. Now on the Jeep, I have tried something similar with some of the parts that were available at the time. From Night Customs to inflate them from 10 scale to 6 scale, and I found that the formula for that was 161.5% size increase. I'm thinking up with the metric, it should be sort of the same. It does already come with a ton of cool molded parts, molded details on the body. Like for example this grille, those headlights, also these searchlights, rigid lights, whatever you want to call those, that grille section underneath the front window, and of course an incredibly detailed interior panel. This interior panel, if you would compare it to the Jeep, is definitely a step up. I felt that in them releasing the Jeep, that was really something that was lacking, was some interior detail. Like for example a gear knob or a four-wheel drive selector, perhaps even some more detail on the steering column, and they have really knocked it out of the park with this Trail Honcho. It covers basically all of those bases. It does not have a driver, so you are also at liberty of experimenting a tiny bit more over there and seeing what has your preference. Perhaps you want to drive it without a driver installed in the interior, and perhaps you do want to have a driver figure. You can just modify a 12-inch figure and drop it in there and call it good. Of course, this also brings the question to mind, or perhaps you have not asked yourself this question: could you blend these two together? And I think that that's something that I will definitely experiment with in the weeks or months ahead. Is, can I use a Jeep cab and a Honcho rear cage and turn it into something of like a blend of these two body styles and see how that turns out? That would of course mean that I would need to use the CRC front bumper instead of the Demello Offroad front bumper, but I think that there lays a nice challenge ahead to see what can be done. I think you need to ask yourself this in order to determine which one is right for you. Can you perhaps get one of these cheaply second-hand? Then you should perhaps do that, because the parts that I'm going to list in the video description box, in order to convert your Jeep to a Trail Honcho, they will not be super expensive. I also think that once Proline comes out with a couple of different body styles, that the ones for the Trail Honcho are going to be far cheaper than any alternative that you would be able to buy for the Jeep, just because of transport size, manufacturing size, and all that stuff. This of course is almost close to a 10 scale regular crawler body. So in terms of economical viability and what it would cost in order to transport an aftermarket body to your home eventually, I think it's safe to say that the Trail Honcho will really be a step above the Jeep in this case. When it comes to running it, this thing is a tiny bit more purpose oriented than the Jeep, so it has less chance of getting hung up. That's of course because it doesn't feature a wide rear bumper, it doesn't feature a lot of overhang in the front or a large front bumper for that matter, and with that it is a tiny bit more capable on the trails, I feel, than the Jeep. The Jeep, however, does not have any body rub. That was the only complaint that I had with the Trail Honcho, was that those front wheels that kind of catch up inside of those wheel arches. There's a couple of cool aftermarket parts available for these trucks already, like for example wheel faces. I have used some Spec RC wheel faces on mine. I also have the Proline methods, which are a really affordable option if you want to just update the look of your truck. Proline also has the Turco Super Swamper tires, which would be a great fit. Pretty sure that those would rub even more inside those front wheel arches. But there are a lot of cool options out if you want to spruce up the look and also the performance of your truck just a tiny bit. I hope this was an informative video. Check out the other videos that I made about the SCX6. Perhaps you want to see how I turned it into a Gladiator with a tiny Gladiator inside. Perhaps you're interested in seeing how I converted a regular 4-door JLU to a 2-door JLU and chopped out 17 millimeters of the wheelbase. And perhaps you're interested also in seeing me run this Trail Honcho, taking it for its maiden run out on the trails, which is something that I did earlier this week and I had a ton of fun with it. Keep your eyes peeled for me painting this thing up, because it has a lot of real estate for me to get creative. I also think I will fire up my 3D printer, have a look at the Night Customs website and see what files they offer in order to kind of personalize the look of this body. You can find all of the Night Customs items at my mini factory. I will make sure that there's a link to that website as well in the video description box, along to links to all of these trucks. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Back on.